Do you consider that the Licensing Act has failed in what it set out to do, and has it contributed to alcohol-related crime and disorder?
No, I don't think it has actually. I think quite the reverse. I think the Licensing Act actually has assisted the situation, and that's not just me saying that. If you look at crime reduction partnerships, you look at the majority of police authorities, that their view is that it's improved. You know, you cut the end of rush, drinking at 11 o'clock. You've spread out the times of removal from pubs, and I actually think what it's also done is given the power for local authorities and police to actively be able to deal with local decision making. And what I've seen in areas like mine, I've been out with my local police in Bradford, is that there's a good spirit between the licensees, the local authority and the police in making sure that they can work together.
Great. When will the witch hunt against pub stop, and when will the government admit that binge drinking problem is created at home by supermarkets?
Well, I've never said that responsible publicans are in any way responsible for binge drinking. What I've seen is that, and we've worked with many of the sector, is that pubs are areas where responsible drinking takes place. We need to tackle binge drinking. Preloading is a big issue. It's a cultural issue that we need to sort out, particularly amongst young people, because of the damaging effects on people's health. But I've never said that pubs are responsible for binge drinking, and I don't think there's a witch hunt against pubs. I think what we've tried to do is that we've seen people's drinking habits change, particularly from the licensing perspective, and DCMS we've tried to assist in making sure that we cut red tape by making applications online, by trying to support in any way that we can speedier applications, and we've looked at trying to look at live music exemptions. We're out to consultation at the moment, so I don't think there's any witch hunt, and we're working as hard as we can to try and improve the situation. And across government now, we had 18 months ago 5 ministers that attended the all-party beer group, and we had the announcement the other week that my colleague John Healy will be dealing with community pubs planning reform where that's possible. Mm-hmm. So rather than there be a witch hunt, I mean, we all recognise it's a difficult time for pubs in the present economic climate. It's good that we've slowed down the rate of closures from 59 down to 39. But we're happy to work with the organisations, to make sure that we do what we can to support good community pubs.
Okay, next question. Do you think alcohol disorder zones were a mistake?
No, I think they're an important tool in the toolkit that we've given police and local authorities to deal with alcohol concerns. I mean, the fact that that they're there, I actually think is actually a sort of prevention, if you like, in terms of having to go right to the whole hog for zones to be enacted. It's again, as I said, part of this toolkit of opportunities that are there to be used.
Great. Given the number of pubs closing at the moment, why is the government adding more cost pressures through its mandatory code?
Well, I think the mandatory code is proportionate. We've been very careful to negotiate with our colleagues in the different departments to make sure it is appropriate and applicable. And again, I think that it's something that will be welcomed by those that want to see responsible drinking.
Great. Given how close it is to the general election, do you think plans for introducing the code on time or are still on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think that regardless of the election, we set out a series of procedures, and as I understand it, we're well on track to make sure that the code is in place.
Why has current action been taken against 24-hour licences, or rather licences between 3 and 6 a.m. When there are so few of them?
Yeah, well, I don't think this will affect pubs, because there's not that many pubs that have got 24-hour licences. But through the evidence that was given to us, there was a slight increase in the number of incidents between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. And what we think is that going back to the toolkit of opportunities to cut and nip into the bud where there's problems, we think giving a local authority the power to shut a street if that's where the problems are occurring is the right way forward. So again, these are not burdens that will affect responsible pubs in any way, but they will help those areas where there are problems.
Are you concerned about the abuse of the beer tie by pub companies?
Yeah, I mean, as I said in the debate that we held in Parliament the other day, that it is an issue that I see not only as a licensing minister but as the constituency MP, and I have a number of people that come to me. So I'm quite pleased that the OFT have decided to take a look again at the camera complaint, and I think it's an issue that is certainly addressing the minds of many parliamentarians and the various committees that we have. So I think it's something that has to be resolved. It won't go away. There are differing views. The BBPA, say it's not a problem. Other groups say it is. So, I think we need to try and get to the core of it. And I come to this not just as licensing minister, but it was an issue when I was consumer minister and competition minister. So I do believe that there is an issue there that needs to be resolved. I'm not saying that all tie is wrong, because in certain models it works, but there is clearly an issue out
there. Okay. Why don't you and your colleagues not take the note of the finding of other colleagues, i.e. The MPs and the select committees, and put the TISC and BEC recommendations into action? Well,
clearly, what we decided as a government, the competition law is a matter for the competition authorities, and the appropriate people is the Office of Fair Trade and the Competition Commission. And clearly, that route is now being used, and hopefully we'll resolve this.
What's your view of licensees withholding rent as part of the industrial action proposed by the GMB?
Well, I understand the anger that there is from those people that are feeling the system's abusing them, but clearly, the issues relating to that are problematic for the trade unions and their employers.
Okay. What do you think of Fair Pint? Do you think they're better and more effective at lobbying than the BBPA?
Well, I think they're equally as good. I think what's appropriate is that we have strong lobbying organisations on behalf of pubs, and I think Fair Pint are doing a good job, as the BBPA and CAMRA. CAMRA obviously, to the forefront there. And the attack is, well, it's government red tape and it's all the government's fault. The reality is it's an industry that's changing. People's drinking habits have changed, and what we're trying to do is make sure we support those pubs, particularly community pubs, that act as a hub for the local community. And in rural communities, that's even more important.
Okay. Are alcohol duty rises inevitable, given the recession and the strength of the health lobby?
Well, I'm not so sure about the health lobby. I think that what the Chancellor does is to listen to representations, as he will do in this budget. And clearly, at the end of the day, the Chancellor has to make the decisions based on the needs of the economy. So we'll await. He does hear from the departments, he does hear from the sector, and obviously he'll make the decisions.
Okay. How likely do you think it is that the smoking ban will be extended to pub doorways?
I'm not sure about this. From my perspective, what we've always said is that, and I always remind MPs that an overwhelming majority of MPs voted for the smoking ban, because the large percentage of the population agree that it's the right way forward, and I certainly believe that it hasn't in any way been over detrimental. I think the evidence shows that it's pretty neutral, because it brings in new customers that don't smoke, and I think anybody goes into a pub and can feel the difference in terms of smoke not being there. We said that we would look at it again in terms of review of the Act, and we will do.
Okay. What's the government going to do to stop Sky ripping off licensees?
Yeah, well, clearly sport and the sports minister, I want people to enjoy it and be able to see sport. We had a meeting with Sky where they agreed to change the way that they base the charges on reasonable value. So I'd look them now to implement that as soon as possible, because clearly in World Cup year, sport on TV is going to be a good draw for bringing people into the pubs, and that's what we would say.
What can, I mentioned him earlier, what can the pubs minister, John Healey, actually achieve?
Well, it's specific. As I said, there's a number of ministers across government that have been working on issues relating to pubs, but John's specifically focusing on community pubs and what needs to be done, or what can be done, around planning reform, community pub ownership. So he's putting together a group of ministers, I'm involved in that, to see what we can do about supporting specifically community pubs. And I think it's because he's in the DCLG, where he's the Minister for Local Government, Minister for Planning, he actually can come up with the proposals in a very short space of time.
Great. Okay. What's your view of people who say the appointment is it's just a pre-election gimmick?
Well, I don't see how you can say that, because there's been, this issue is not just something new. It's been with us for all the time I can remember being in government, and before that. And ministers have been working in different ways to try and support pubs.